message on your screen indicating that this is being recorded. All right. All right. Welcome everyone to this year's grant reviewer training. I'm going to hand over the training briefly for a welcome from Shannon Teague, our Assistant Director. So Shannon, if you won't mind, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Charmaine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 21st Century Community Learning Center's Grant Reviewer Training. I am super excited that all of you have decided to support us in scoring our 21st Century Grant applications. It has been an extremely trying year for our students and our staff and honestly our after school providers, and we are in the fact that it's been trying not only in our state, but it's just been trying all over the country, and our students have suffered, and they have suffered the most. And we actually have less applications than we've had, not significantly less, but a little less applications. And as many of you know, there's a lot of funding that has reached schools and school districts. And with that, people are creating other support for students. We want to ensure that 21st century programs continue to be quality programs that students can grow and learn from. With that, we ask that you take your time in reading the applications. Stay within the timeline, but take your time in reading the applications and honestly looking for the things that you will learn today. So this training is designed specifically for you. It's designed to sort of walk you through what our expectations are, what we're looking for as a 21st century program. We want you to do the same. I need to be honest and upfront. Every year, we receive some level of pushback based on what our grant reviewers have scored. They sometimes programs that aren't awarded will identify some discrepancies, or they'll see where there's issues that maybe you didn't read clearly, or your comments weren't congruent with what they wrote. We're trying our best to eliminate that through this training. That's why we want you to pay attention, so that your work doesn't come into question. Your work is it upholds the same quality and that we're looking for in our grant writers, right? In our grantees. And so we want this process to be fair, and we want this process to be consistent for all of our applicants. So we simply just want to identify the best of the best out there that can provide the best services for students in our state. I do believe that all of you are returners, so that's almost refreshing for us. We vet out our grantees every single year. So I'm happy that we have the group that we have this year. We don't anticipate any issues, but again, just wanted to set the tone today about how important this grant review is for us. And we want you to, when you come up against things that you have questions, please ask us. Reach out to Charmaine. She is a wealth of knowledge. She's had oversight of the grant review training for quite some time. Dr. Lodeman, we've contracted with Dr. Lodeman. We definitely appreciate and value his input in the reviewer training process. So we want you to do the exact same thing. Again, I thank you. I appreciate your care and concern about our grant, and care and concern about the students that we are seeking to serve that are in most need in our state. So again, allow this session to be interactive, where you're asking questions and are very clear on each section that you will be reviewing this year. We thank you, and again, we appreciate your support in connecting with us for 21st Century Grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes, we
Okay,
can,
it looks like I'm still muted. Sorry, it's a little delayed on my end, but thank you, Shannon, for that warm welcome and very intentional welcome. I think what you said is really important. This past year has been a challenge for many of our schools, for our community-based organizations that supported our schools through after school, for our students and their families. And so please keep that in mind along with what you're learning today. With the applications that we've received, because those that applied have taken great care in providing that information and being considered for this program funding. So again, thank you, Shannon, for that, and because it's really necessary. And so we're going to go ahead and move on with the training. So we do this every year as a way for you all to understand what you are expecting for your training experience today. So we're going to provide an overview of the Nita M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant program. And you notice from last year that the name has changed across the nation. We are now going by the Nita M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant program, which is the official name of the program. So you'll notice that throughout this training, as well as the materials that you may have received. We're going to provide you an overview of the CCIP application. Now, ahead of time, you've noticed you have already been involved or had access to the CCIP via your OHID account. This is just another refresher that we're going to walk through as part of you using this to address your assigned applications moving forward as part of this process. Then we're going to provide you with grant reviewer expectations. Again, as Shannon stated, many of you, if not all of you, are returning. So many of these expectations haven't changed, but again, because Ohio is Ohio, we are going to reiterate that to ensure that you understand what is expected of you as a grant reviewer for the state of Ohio and the 21st Century Grant Program. We're also going to review the FY22 grant reviewer rubric and calibration application. And then we're going to end with some questions. And so for clarification, we are asking you again to drop any questions that you have in the chat, and a member of our team will assist in answering those. A member of our team is also going to compile those questions and add those to an updated version of the grant reviewer guide that you received before. We're going to update that so that you have some Q&A as part of that for your reference moving forward. All right. All right, so I'm going to ask really quickly for everyone from the 21st Century team, if you can please share or turn your camera on for us, please, so everyone can see your lovely faces. I know, Dr. Lohman, you may not be able to, but we know that you're here. All right, and I'm actually going to ask for anyone that's not a member of the team to please turn off your camera. I think I'm miscommunicated. So this, I'm asking, yes, thank you. All right, so for everyone, just so you can see who we are your 21st Century Community Learning Centers team. Leading our team is Shannon Teague, our Assistant Director, who you just met earlier. We have Dr. Stacy Brinkley. She is our interim grants manager. She has been with our team for several months, but she has been with the department for some time. She is very experienced and well-versed in various education policies, and she is learning and supporting our team greatly in her role as interim grants manager. So thank you, Stacy, and welcome. This is her first time attending our training. So it is a wonderful experience to have a new person to come on and be a part and supporting what we do. So thank you, Stacy. We have Charlotte Jones Ward, who is one of our education program specialists. She supports the team in a number of capacities. First year implementation, the Green Schools Initiative, and supporting our Southeast and Northwest regions as part of her work as well. So thank you, Char, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself. I am Charmaine Davis Bay, your training and process grant review process facilitator and lead. I am also an education program specialist with our department's 21st Century program. I oversee the Northeast and Southwest regions of the state. I do a number of roles on the back end as well with the monitoring application with our external community learning or community partnership listing and a number of things I won't go into. But again, I contribute as well as we do to the work of this program. So again, welcome from me. We also have Tabitha Palmer, our data coordinator. She is our guru when it comes to collecting and maintaining our data. She's currently working on some things with the 21 APR system. She's capturing our attendance today. She will be assigning your applications immediately after this training, which you will receive between today and tomorrow. So welcome, Tabitha. Thank you for your part in this. As well, we have our grant support staff, Nina Pace, our financial guru. She's our financial program manager. She will be supporting us with anything fiscal. So you'll be hearing from her today. And if you have any questions, of course, please drop them in the chat. She'll be more than happy to assist in that space. And also we have Dr. Bill Lohman, who's been around for some time, I think, what, 9-10 years now? I'm guesstimating. But he is our independent contractor who you'll be hearing from once again, leading part of this training when it comes to grant expectations and going through the calibration data that you all so kindly provided us so we can do something new that we have not done before. Normally you would have done the calibration during the training, but we did it in advance. So now we're going to talk about the data that you provided as well as some comments that we found were very useful in supporting the scores that you provided there. So Dr. Lohman, again, welcome. And we're going to go ahead and move forward with this training. But again, I just want to take time to introduce the team so you have names with faces. So thank you all. You can go ahead and turn your cameras back off if you want to. Thank you. Okay, so during today's training, participants, which are you, will be able to understand important components of the 21st Century Grant, understand what is expected of you as a competitive grant reviewer for the state of Ohio, and understand how to score using the electronic process to document scores. So I want to take time now to reiterate that there are some of you who have read for different states here, which is great. We love that you have experience reading for different states. As a reminder, each state's process is different. Although we are all under the 21st Century umbrella, each state has their own expectations as for grant reviewers. Please review the guidance and supporting documents that you have been provided thoroughly to understand what our department looks for in a quality application for 21st Century. I am happy to share, though, that we have a number of reviewers from across the state of Ohio and across the country. After this year's vetting process, we are confident that we have chosen the best of those who have applied to assist our department and the Office for Improvement and Innovation, for which 21st Century here is housed, to determine which of our submitted applications are deemed quality and deserving of an FY22 21st Century Grant Award. Let me clarify. Although you all have officially, applied to be a part of this and have done this work for some time, we still have to ensure that what you have provided shows that you have been deemed to be a reviewer. And so even though you've done this many times over the years, we still have you provide that information for our records so that we can come back and say that you are indeed worthy of becoming a reviewer for our state. All right, so an overview of our program. So what is Anita M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers program, or 21st CCLC? It is a federally funded program authorized under the passage of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. The funding provides opportunities for children who come from economically disadvantaged families and attending low-performing schools to receive additional academic interventions, youth development enrichment, and family engagement opportunities outside of the normal school setting or school day. The purpose of the 21st Century program is threefold. All funded programs must provide opportunities for academic enrichment to assist students in meeting the state academic standards. offer students access to a broad array of additional services such as those that focus on youth development, social emotional learning, civic engagement, and nutritional and physical health, and offer adult family members of program participants opportunities for educational development and engagement in their child's education. Please refer to the FY22 request for applications, or RFA, that you received in your June 3rd email, or as of yesterday, yesterday's email. I resent that for details on this and any approved activities that will fall under our program. And I don't recall the page number, but please look for that section that says approved activities. Okay, some quick reminders here. ESSA has altered the focus of 21st Century to include expanded learning time during the day and out of school time that aligns with academic support and interventions to the state's academic standards and the needs of students. So please keep that in mind. Additionally, ESSA has broadened the allowable activities to include such things as internships, apprenticeships, and career and technical programs. With regards to the grant options, there are 3 in Ohio. There are option 1, option 2, and option 3. We did not have any option 1 applications this year, so we would just be reviewing option 2 and option 3. We will go more into that shortly. We are still in 5-year grant cycles, thankfully. And with regards to performance measures, we will go through that. Shar is going to lead you through the performance measures that currently grantees are expected to adhere to as part of their experience with 21st Century. With regards to prompts, there are now prompts 1 through 20, and depending on which option you read, and as you notice through your calibration, if you have an option 2 grant, you will have 1 prompt that you will not be addressing, and that's the one for option 3, which is, I believe, prompt 18. And then option 3, you will be omitting response to that 1 prompt. You would be putting NA in that. And again, we'll go through that a little bit later, but just note that there are 20 prompts total, but depending on what option you read, you will be omitting addressing one of those prompts. With regards to the partnership agreement, this is an agreement again between the applicant and their identified primary partner. You will notice that as part of the attachments that were provided as part of the applications that you received, that partnership agreement needs to be completed and signed, as well as attached to the application that you are looking at, in order for the application to be valid. If you receive an application that does not have a valid partnership agreement in place, please inform me as soon as possible, and we will make sure to reach out to that applicant as part of the process. As well, all applicants should have a non-public consultation form as a part of their application submission that must be signed by the applicant and every eligible non-public. For LEAs or local education agencies, a form for each non-public that they have a relationship with must be provided. For a public charter or community school applicant, a form for each non-public that is in reasonable proximity should be attached. Please follow along in the FY22 RFA as part of this training so that you understand when we go through each section of this training that you know where it corresponds to in the RFA. This tool, specifically the RFA, will allow you to better understand not only what should be included in the applications that you're reading, but what makes up a quality 21st century application. All right, so with the FY22 application, there were a few changes from last year. So please be mindful of these as you go through the training and ultimately receive your assigned application. So number 1, we do have mandatory summer programming now required for all applications submitted for FY22. So anyone that is awarded this year, moving forward, they will have to implement summer programming. Next, we will go through competitive priority, which is also a new component that was added on this year for FY22 applications. So there are 3 competitive priority areas for high school, for positive youth development and for family engagement. Applicants were able to select up to 2 if they chose. So if they didn't choose any, that's okay. If they chose 1 or if they chose 2. But they were only able to choose up to 2. And Shannon's going to talk a little bit about those 2. And then as part of Appendix A, you will notice again that there are 20 prompts in the scoring rubric. Please pay attention once you get there. As you're scoring your applications, please note that there are 20 prompts now in the scoring rubric. Okay, Shannon, if you don't mind, if you could please touch base on the summer enrichment piece. This is, again, a new component of all new applications that were received this year.
Yes, thank you, Charmaine. And yes, the summer enrichment component is new, sorta. We have always had the summer enrichment piece in the application. However, it was an option. And so if they clicked that they wanted to offer summer programming, then they would give us details on it. And we never scored it. Now it's different based on students having a little learning loss from the school closures due to COVID-19. The department has decided to make all 21st century programs engage in summer enrichment. So you will see a section for summer enrichment, and in that prompt, everyone is required to list what their plans are for summer. Here, we've asked in the application that they identify at least 100 hours for summer programming. Please make sure that they discuss what they'll be doing in their programming description. Also, it is good, and I don't think, and Nina might want to jump in here, I'm sorry. I don't think that we require them to articulate that it's 100 hours and what they'll be doing each hour, but we do require them to identify the robust programming, their schedule, etc. So we just want to make sure that they describe what they're doing over the summer and that it's 100 hours.
Yes, you're correct, Shannon. It wasn't asked for detailed, just a total of 100.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so just make sure that you look at that. And then again, we want you to be able to identify that it's well planned and it's centered on the primary focus of 21st century. We don't want them to talk about, we're just going to do some activities where it may be described as it's a drop-in program or a babysitting service. We want to make sure that they're focused on math enrichment, reading enrichment, youth development activities. That would be any activity, honestly, around social emotional learning. Keep in mind that this particular population is a population who needs to be exposed to activities that are outside of what they would probably normally be exposed to, right? We want them to experience different things in the community. We want them to connect with a lot of community organizations, go on field trips, do some things that possibly their parents couldn't afford or be able to take them on. We want these folks to think outside the box. So really score higher on programs that identify some very different out of the box thinking for summer programming. We definitely don't want it to be very didactic. We want kids to have some experiential learning. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. And really quickly, I just wanted to add as part of what I have here for the notes. When you all are reading this section, prompt is actually prompt 20 of each application that you review. The program, their summer programming may not exceed 30% of their program's total annual grant amount. So please keep that in mind. No more than 30% can be used for summer programming. So that was the one thing I wanted to mention. So thank you, Shannon. And we're going to move on now to competitive priority, where again, Shannon's going to talk a little bit more about that. And you can find that on pages 7 and 8 of the RFA.
I'm just talking away on mute. Okay, and so as Charmaine mentioned, you can find that listed in your RFA. Please review each one of those sections. The high school and college and career entrepreneurship section is a new section where we want to focus on students to have experience in entrepreneurship, experience in college and career readiness, where they're focused on some hands-on learning while they're in their 21st century programs. And this is, of course, focused on our high school students. Again, read over that section carefully. The positive youth development. So there's another section there where we're focused on the positive youth development, the social emotional learning. Again, what the department has identified is there's a significant loss, not only in academics, but also in youth connection, community connection, development of students. And so we are really wanting to lean towards programs that incorporate mental health and physical health, social emotional health around our students moving forward. Just again, thinking of out of the box programming for students that is positive and engaging for students in this population. And then lastly, family engagement. And the family engagement section, again, we are planning to work on a contract. So we really want you to work on a contract around family engagement. So we really want you to sort of look at this section and ensure that they understand what family engagement is. They understand that incorporating parents into the student work is important. We want them to describe how you are engaging families. How do you plan to communicate with families? So any activities, quite honest, we don't have specific activities outlined, but any activities around engaging parents, involving them in programs, involving student and parent activities. We don't necessarily want them to say, we're going to have a pizza night, because that's just pulling families together and maybe have an activity. We want them to be engaged in the programming. Have they helped with curriculum? Have they helped in learning what their students are doing? Have they created programs or learning sessions, financial literacy around helping parents specifically help their students? So we're looking at family growth here. We're looking at family engagement, real engagement in these sections.
Thank you, Shannon. I know this may be a question that comes up later, but I wanted to ask you, what are the reviewers to do if an applicant applies competitive priority in those sections of the application? What should they do as part of their scoring?
So I'm not sure I understand your question. What do you mean? What should they do in part of their scoring?
If an applicant if they apply for a competitive priority area, if they checked off they want positive youth development, how are they to apply that as part of their scoring and comments for the application that they're reviewing? Is there an area that they're going to provide that? I'm just thinking scenario wise if that becomes a question that comes up and how they're supposed to address it.
So how we've described it in our RFA is if everyone looks in that section, it identifies that they can only apply for 2 of those sections. So if they want priority points, there's a section in the application where they actually can fill out their responses. I'm thinking that's what you're getting at. And they can only apply for 2. If they do apply for 3, there'll be an error message. So they won't be able to do that. I'm thinking that's what you're asking me.
That's
But
correct.
okay.
Shannon, let me just add that the priority sections are not scored in the rubric. So they would not be scored. Those will be weighted parts of the application as we go through the LOGIC process.
That's correct, because it's a competitive priority. So you're right, Shar.
Yes, well, okay.
So I would recommend.
Yeah, because we do identify them as maybe Dr. Lodeman can do that. Yeah. Because they are priority, they're competitive priority. So they are being scored per se. in the application process, but it's part of Dr. Lodeman.
Uh-oh, Shannon, you muted yourself.
Okay, sorry. What our grantees need to know is to ensure that they're reading each one of those sections and that they're making sure that what's outlined in the application is also identified with the competitive priorities. So
Yeah.
they are being scored, Shar, just in a different way. I just haven't like articulated per se how they're being scored, because the grantees on the grant reviewers don't necessarily need to know Dr. Lodeman's process. They just need to make sure that they are identifying that those things are in the application.
So we do have a question in the chat really quickly. So we do not score the competitive priority. So how do we note if they do not match up?
Nina, can you take that question?
What I was getting ready to recommend is that because they're going to be, can you hear me?
Yes.
They are part of the competitive priority as part of the fastest process, it will be weighted. Now, in regard to their responses, my recommendation is that if that section needs to be beefed up, the program office will review it upon the award, and they will let you know if anything should be increased or what the issue may be. Because
it's enhanced.
Yeah, because that could be a program office decision to see what needs to be enhanced, and a history log comment can be added by the grantee if they're awarded.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, everyone, if this sounds confusing to you. This is something that honestly just kind of came up in our office, and we needed to include these priorities. So again, I apologize if it sounds confusing. However, that these sections are in here, and they will be weighted to a score that probably doesn't make much sense. Again, you just need to review those. Nina, is there a section there where they could make comment that this section was not robust?
No, but in the section of the youth development prompt and the parent and family engagement prompt, they can add a note in that section. Yeah. And, you know, for program office, if you guys feel that this didn't work for you this year, since this is new, you can add it next year. But now there are prompts related to youth development, family engagement, and high school if they apply for option 3.
Okay.
So Melissa, to answer your last question, is there any way to add a comment section for us as scores? So what Nina just stated is that there are sections, there are prompts in your rubric for positive youth development, for family engagement, and for the option 3, middle and high school. If they apply for any one of these competitive priorities, you can make mention of that in your comments for those prompts. So if they, you know, apply for the high school college career prompt applicant or competitive priority, in that section that prompt in that application, you can say the competitive priority piece was strong and it supports what they're proposing as part of their application, something of that effect. But again, right now, there is no specific section for you to provide comments for the competitive priorities. You would just be incorporating that into each corresponding prompt in the rubric for each application that you score. And she's saying that prompt 20 speaks to this. Okay.
I think prompt 20 is for the summer.
Yes, for summer.
Yeah.
So again, we just want to ensure that there's clarity there. We can again come back to this if there are any additional questions about this. But again, for clarification, there is no section for you to score for competitive priority. You're just reading it. And if you want to note that as part of your feedback for those prompts, then you can. And I would encourage that, because then you can tell them that because they are proposing this program and the competitive priority was added, then they, you know, it strengthens why you're scoring them, what you're scoring them. All right, so we're going to continue to move forward in that space. Okay, we're going to talk about the.
But to go back to that, so it will be it will be scored. It's just not necessarily scored by them. They just need to read it for content.
Yep.
And I will add in the chat later which prompt is youth development, family engagement,
Yeah.
and for high school.
Thank you, Nine. Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Nina.
Yep. So again, we'll make sure, to clarify if necessary for any additional questions there. Thank you. All right. So we're moving on to types of grants with Shar.
Thank you, Charmaine. So I'm going to be talking about the types of grants and the options that are available in more detail, and then also the performance measures. So applicants will implement 21st century program using one of the following options. Option 1, which has already been mentioned. There were no options applications submitted for FY22, so I'll move on to the next one. Option 2 is out of school time and is available to elementary school students, and applicants choosing this option must provide comprehensive out of school time programming at the school-based, site-based, or remote option during the school year to include before, after, and summer programming for a selected population of students. So the focus of option 2 programs must be on reading, math, positive youth development, and parent engagement. Option 3 is also out of school time. It is available to middle and high school students, and applicants choosing this option must provide comprehensive out of school time programming at a school-based, site-based, or remote option during the school year to include before, after, and summer programming for a select population of students as well. These programs must include a focus on college and career readiness and/or dropout prevention strategies, as well as additional supports and programming as required under the grant, such as reading, math, positive youth development, and parent engagement. Next slide, please. All applicants are required to work toward meeting the performance measures. The performance measures should guide all programming efforts. Performance measures are designed to show student impact in a number of important areas based on our state evaluation results. Objectives are designed to describe what applicants should demonstrate if they positively affect student outcomes. For example, programs will be able to demonstrate educational and social benefits and positive behavioral changes. Measures are specific expectations for each objective and are what applicants will provide or deliver as part of the program. For example, it is expected that 100% of the sites deliver enrichment opportunities in reading and math that use evidence-based strategies and practices, and that 100% of the programs provide at least 2 hours on average of reading and math enrichment per week. Next slide, please. So the goal of performance measures is to impact reading, math with a focus on literacy achievement, mathematics, positive youth development, and parent and family engagement. Next slide, please. Objectives are what we expect applicants to demonstrate, deliver, and ensure as part of the programming. So objective 1, applicants should discuss how they intend to demonstrate improvement in educational and social benefits and behavioral changes. Objective 2, applicants should share how they intend to deliver high-quality programs that affect student outcomes in school attendance and academic performance, and in decreased disciplinary actions or other adverse behaviors. Objective 3, applicants should discuss ways they plan to ensure that the out-of-school activities target the students' academic needs and align with instruction during the school day. Next slide, please. Objective 4, applicants should discuss how they will deliver evidence-based educational opportunities that promote family involvement and family literacy. And objective 5, Applicants should describe how they will establish ongoing partnerships of mutual support with community-based organizations and local agencies. And lastly, implementing performance measures and objectives with fidelity can have an impact on our 21st century programming in Ohio. So if you have questions regarding the performance measures, please put them in the chat. And with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Charmaine. So thank you very much. Charmaine, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. It takes a minute for some reason to unmute. Thank you, Char, for that part of the presentation or the training with regards to performance objectives. All right, so let's talk about key elements. So we have a number of key elements here that you need to be mindful of as part of your experience as a grant reviewer and looking at each of the applications that you will be receiving for this year. First, let's talk about evidence-based practices. These are practices that have been shown to be effective ways of enhancing students' reading and math, academic performance, youth development, family engagement, and college or career preparation, especially practices that are proven to be effective when working with after-school populations. So when your applicants are providing various components of programming, you should be looking to see if it is evidence-based. That is supporting the quality of the program that they're proposing. So please be on the lookout for that. Federal resource coordination. This is applicants discussing how they will coordinate with other federal funds, such as McKinney-Vento, Title I, and Title IV. Again, it's important that our applicants are looking at other resources beyond 21st century to support their program. So again, using additional federal funds to support this is one way to show that. Also, internal and external resources. With applicants, they should be discussing how they will use their resources such as facilities, expertise, in-kind donations, and community donations and services. This is to help with program sustainability, as well as blending or supporting their program in various ways. And so in your applications, within the narrative, you should be looking at the various ways that they are using these resources to support their program outside of traditional funds. With regards to professional development, applicants should have a professional development plan that provides ongoing training to address program needs and licensing requirements. This includes, for example, that they're going to have a orientation at the beginning of the school year to orient all of their staff. If they're going to offer PD or have PD for reading, math, youth development, and family engagement, for example. And if they offer examples by name of these types of trainings, that will be really helpful, because then you'll know that they've taken time to identify the types of PD that they want to offer their staff. Training on data collection, on gap analysis, etc. So please be mindful. Yes, they may mention they have a PD plan, but what does that include? And again, it may take some time for them to actually firm that up, but at least acknowledge through your scoring that they have a plan and that they thought about what types of PD they would like to offer their staff. And those are just examples of the PD that they should or could offer. Also, with program evaluation, you're looking at who will be the staff person responsible for doing the collection, the analysis, and the dissemination of program data. They should have someone identified, whether by name or by title, that will be responsible for doing their program evaluation. With sustainability, applicants need to have a robust plan that addresses how they will continue to plan beyond the funding cycle with 21st century, which is again 5 years. For example, they need to describe their partnerships, other funding streams, in-kind services, how they will communicate success with stakeholders, etc. So again, and this is also a part of the RFA, please be mindful of this piece. It's really important because although these are funds that are supporting them currently, it is not long term. 21st Century is here to assist with getting their program started, and hopefully to continue beyond their grant cycle, because even after their 5 years, there's no guarantee that they will be awarded an additional grant after. So this sustainability plan that they're proposing needs to detail their plan to get them through and beyond the grant cycle. If you have questions or doubts if they have not done so, then you need to score and provide comments appropriately to say why they did not do that. And finally, with partnerships, applicants should describe how they will establish working relationships with school day staff and their primary partner. The primary partner should have a clear role to support the program and evaluation implementation. The first being the applicant, who in turn partners with a local education agency or a community-based organization. So with the partnership piece, remember, if an LEA or a traditional school district or ESC, for example, is applying for the grant, then a CBO needs to be their primary partner. If a CBO is if a CBO is an applicant, then an LEA needs to be the primary partner. Again, when you're looking at a partnership agreement, it needs to be the district or the ESC or the charter school that is listed as the applicant or primary partner, not the school building. And then it will be the entity that will be the CBO and vice versa. So again, please be mindful of the type of partnership that needs to be in place, and that should be clear again in the RFA. And so some examples of LEAs, let's do that. Let's talk about that. We have traditional school districts. We have educational service centers or ESCs. We have charter or community learning or community schools. Examples of community-based organizations for your reference include faith-based organizations, child care centers. Colleges and universities are CBOs. Please be mindful that although this is a higher education institution, a college and university is considered a CBO. As well, the program office will review data to verify various partnerships as needed. And again, the partnership agreement should be properly signed by the applicant and primary partner and uploaded as part of the application documentation. If you find that that is not done properly, please inform myself and we will make note of that. So at some point, we will communicate with the applicant to ensure that this is in place before anyone is awarded, if they are eligible for awards. All right, so let's talk about indicators. So indicators are the department's expectations and have to be addressed in most of the prompts that you will be reviewing in the applications that you will be receiving. Another example of an indicator or expectation, so I'm going to read this as part of what you will see, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide. It is expected that 100% of centers will provide at least 3 evidence-based educational development opportunities for families of participating students. For example, family literacy classes, parenting classes, activities to support family engagement in the school and community, etc. Please note, to review objectives and indicators, please go to your scoring rubric starting with prompt 1. So as we're going through this, when we're talking about indicators, please go to that scoring rubric piece, and you can find that in the grant reviewer guide, which was that box that has the red heading, or you can go directly to the RFA, to Appendix A, and in each prompt you'll be able to see that the scoring rubric is a part of that. So let's take a look. Here's a screenshot of the CCIP scoring rubric. The CCIP scoring rubric will have the objectives and the indicators aligned to the prompts. Note that not all prompts will have objectives and indicators. So the objectives are located at the top in the first paragraph. So this is the objective where it's noted here. The next paragraph will be the indicator or the prompt. So objective and then the indicator or prompt is here. Then the prompt will be the last paragraph. Applicants have responded to each prompt. The responses should address each objective and indicator. So as you are reviewing responses from the applicants in each prompt, they should be addressing the objective and the indicator. Please make note of that as you are scoring. Also note that all applicants are to upload pertinent documents, including the signed and dated partnership agreement and non-public consultation form as stated previously. Okay, and I forgot to take that out. All right, so this is objectives and indicators. Again, please be mindful that all applicants under each prompt should have addressed the objective and the indicator / prompt as part of their responses. They also need to have all pertinent documents uploaded here under the evidence link. And if you need to view the application for scoring, you can find that here at the top part, the top link at the top of the screen. I'm looking at the chat. Thank you, Shar, for addressing that last question. All righty, so now we are going to move on to allowable use of funds. And Nina's going to take over and address that here. Thanks, Nina. Take it away.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to ask that when you review allowable use of funds, go to page 15 of the RFA. That starts any type of 21st century expenditures. So first, we'll go through allowable use of funds, and I'm actually going to turn off my camera because I'm going to do a demonstration here shortly. So the first thing, as you begin to review the prompt that details, and I think it's prompt 8 and 9, it details out how each applicant plans to spend their funds. So allowable, of course, they have to pay salary and benefits of their staff. Any type of curriculum materials that they want to incorporate. If the area have a need for transportation, you will see transportation cost in the budget, and that is an allowable use of funds. Any type of supplies that pertains to any type of academic enrichment. Also, the non-academic enrichment supplies would be allowable as well. On the next screen, also keep in mind, now this top part, under the basic guidelines for 21st century, student, staff, and parent incentives are allowable. But keep in mind, anything regarding food, for example, any type of gift cards for food, we want to deter away from that. We communicate that with our current grantees, and now that's a red flag. So any type of restaurant gift cards are not allowable, but any item that you purchase with federal funds, you have to think about it. Is it reasonable, necessary for the need for that population of students and families that they're serving? And is there a need to retain staff? So under that incentives, it's very cut that they have to have a need. So they should provide in their responses any type of needs for students, staff, and parents. Evaluation, program evaluation cost and sustainability cost is an allowable use of funds with 21st century. There is a maximum amount of $10,000 for evaluation costs that they should incorporate. We did add measures into the budget grid where it will cause an error if they exceed $10,000, but in the narrative under prompt 8 where you're reviewing, you want to see evaluation cost. If you do not see evaluation cost in the details for how they plan to use their funds, you may want to consider that they're not providing all services necessary. So I'm not going to tell you how to score, but an evaluation cost should be found. Youth development. So because positive youth development is a component of 21st century, you may see some contracts under purchase services for youth development. Okay, next slide. And before I go under unallowable use of funds, I have a question. Should the incentives be described in detail in prompts? Yes. Okay, because it will determine allowability. So the details of what type of incentives are necessary, because if it's something that they're trying to buy a boat, that's unallowable. So you want to make sure that any type of incentives are detailed out, because it will take away on the score if they're unallowable expenses. Okay, so thank you. Let's go on to unallowable expenses, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. Food of any kind. Food is an unallowable use of fund with 21st century funds. And you know that under the program, they have to provide a healthy snack to the students daily. That is through a resource, a collaboration, or partnership. You cannot use 21st century funds to purchase food. That includes the snacks. So there's an exception. If the food is part of curriculum supplies, then it will be allowed. And if it is, then somewhere in your narrative, you should see a section where they are incorporating a culinary arts or a cooking class. And if so, all of the applicants will have to have lesson plans later on once they are monitored by the 21st century staff. So food of any kind is not an allowable use of fund unless it's tied to curriculum supplies. You should never see any type of funding set aside for a grant writer in their breakdown of expenses. Any type of fundraising supplies that is not an allowable use of fund, that's a federal requirement. Any type of purchase or of a vehicle or a building, any type of major infrastructure is unallowable. Those type of expenses should come out of the general revenue fund for the district or another funding stream. It says, what about food items that are part of curriculum, a STEM curriculum activity? That will be curriculum supplies. Okay, so if it is part of a STEM curriculum activity, then that food item should be part of a lesson plan. Okay, so, but that's curriculum. So thank you for that question. I think it's Marga. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate real quickly the funding application, how it's set up. I think many of you are familiar, but as indicated by the program office, they like for me to kind of go through this and do a live session. So 21st century performance measures that Shar spoke of not too long ago. Shannon told you about the 3 options, even though there are no applications for option 1. And then 3, the program design. So I will share my screen and bring up the CCIP. And if someone could let me know if there are any additional questions in the chat while I'm moving forward with presenting, I would appreciate it. So,
Hey, Shar,
go ahead. Shar, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead. I was
No,
just
no,
going to.
no. Go ahead.
Okay, so Nina, there's a question in the chat that says, what about food items that are part of a STEM curriculum activity?
yes, I just addressed that.
Okay.
And I shared them that if it's STEM curriculum, it would be curriculum supplies, and that they should have a lesson plan as part of that activity. So that still would be curriculum. So thank you. I'm going
okay, another one that I responded to was there was a question about should the answer be in the specific prompt or do they view the application as a comprehensive application? And so I addressed it as saying that all the details should be in the prompt. We don't expect them to look at other parts of the application to address the prompt. Nina or Sherman, could you just clarify that for me and others?
Okay.
Okay.
Go
So, Rosemary asked for clarification as well, because she's saying in previous years, she was encouraged to consider all information, even if it's found in another part of the application, rather than with the correct prompt, because she's confused by SHARS. So I'm per the RFA Appendix A, which you can find starting on page 22. It states applicants are encouraged to review the rubric to develop responses that gain maximum consideration for each prompt. So each prompt that they are addressing should be addressing the prompt. And so if you have to look at other parts of the application to address the prompt that you're reading, then that's not what they were asked to do. And so I would just encourage you, implore you all, and again, it's stated in the RFA that all the responses that you are looking at per prompt should be addressing what we talked about before, the objective and the prompt. The objective and the indicator. So please be mindful of that. I would say, for clarification, we talked about the competitive priority piece. I think that's one of the exceptions there. So they're addressing that in that competitive priority section. If they take time to mention that in the corresponding prompts, that's fine to note that. But you shouldn't have to look at other parts of the application to address a previous prompt. And so it is expected that each applicant has taken time to address each prompt properly, and that's what you should be scoring. I hope that clarifies the question there. Thank you. Nina, you can proceed.
Okay, can you guys see my the CCIP?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So briefly going to go through that. The first section on the PowerPoint referenced the performance measures. Shar went through the performance measures. So you will see this on each application. So that's the first part. The second part Okay, the second part goes into all of the questions that will be reviewed by the program office, is information regarding the applicant. What is next are the grant options. So here you'll find the grant option. For each application, it will tell you which option they chose. This is just for the calibration that we provided. So this section goes into the grant options. Okay. The next section that you will see is the program design. Under the program design, it goes into the competitive priorities. And this is just what it looks like from the application view. The high school, college career portion first, positive youth development, and then family engagement. After that, as part of the program design, it goes into all the details in regards to programming. So it provides the dates that the applicant will provide summer programming, how many weeks for the robust summer programming, the grade levels that they will serve. So you'll have an idea of what the program looks like, or anticipated program looks like. Also, in the next section of the application, we asked about program income. This is an administrative review, so from a reader standpoint, you won't need to review that section. Next, it provides the program start and end date. It also provides the no later than and no sooner than date that they should end. So you'll have the ability to review that as well, and the program hours of operation. So if they will provide programming in the mornings before school, you will see those hours indicated. And if they reference something different in the application, that will kind of be a red flag. Here, it asks for the total hours of operation for the week. So you'll see how many hours and also how many students they anticipate serving. So you'll see that amount in the application as well. The next section is the needs assessment. These three components are not scored, but it kind of gives you, as a reviewer, the overview of the need for the grant. Okay, so you'll be able to review that information and all the applicant responses. Now, this next section is the actual planning tool for the prompt sections. So prompts 1 through 7 are specific to the 21st century grant requirements, all 4: reading, math, positive youth development, and parent and family engagement. So 1 through 7, you should see the responses, and they should be clear and concise. If anything, if you're in the middle of review and some of the content cuts, that's because the applicant exceeded the number of characters in their responses. So that's all you will see, and you need to score accordingly. This final section of the prompts are prompts 8 through 20. So these are more of program components. This is where you will see the youth development, family engagement. You will see the budget. So a breakdown of the budget will be under prompts 8 and 9. So that's where you'll see the details in regard to how they anticipate spending those dollars. Professional development. I know Charmaine referenced the need for professional development. Under prompt 10, it'll talk about that professional development. Prompt, I think it's prompt, let's see, this next section, prompt 15, I think it's prompt 15. No, sorry. So each of these will go into detail on the mandated 21st century requirements, and depending on what option that they chose for the application. And prompt 20 is the new prompt that we added, and it goes into that mandatory summer programming. Okay, so I wanted to breeze through that real quick. The next section that you'll see information on is the 21st century requirements when you're reviewing, and it talks about that healthy snack. So the healthy snack and the partnership agreement information. Make sure that you review all of the downloads, and I think it was Charmaine that had mentioned, make sure that it's signed. I think it was Charmaine or Char. Make sure that the partnership agreement is signed by both entities, the applicant and the primary partner. So it should be a local education agency as well as a community-based organization that signs it. It should never be 2 CBOs or 2 LEAs. Okay, so here it goes into detail as far as the sites that they intend to have services, and then finally the provision of equitable services. So there is another uploaded documentation, that non-public consultation form that you'll need to review for each non-public school that's in the area of the site to be served. And I know Charmaine had went through that. So, okay. So that's the application, the CCIP application. I'm going to stop sharing and we can get back to the slide, the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Nina. And for clarification, under the area where you will find uploads of documents, also note that for any competitive priority that was applied for, you will also see some documents as far as needs assessment survey data. That should also be supporting the competitive priority areas that applicants may have chosen to apply towards their application. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted there as well as part of the what Nina just walked through. Thank you.
Okay. And there's a question, will we receive a copy of this CCIP you just covered? So no, but when you go into the CCIP for your scoring process, you will actually, once you click on each application, it will populate the application for view that I just showed you. If the partnership agreement is not signed, should we still score and just notify you? I think Charmaine mentioned that if there are any issues with any of the uploaded documentation, that you will contact her directly. Is that correct?
It is. Thank you, Nina. So, Melissa, if they mention that they have a partnership in place and the agreement's not done properly, just let us know and we'll make a note of that. So in the event that that grant application is awarded, we would make sure that they have that documentation in place before that. We would just be reaching out to them after this piece of the process is over. So yeah, just please let us know if there are some things that are not right with the application and we'll take care of it. Thank you.
Yes. So I just did a demonstration of the application via the CCIP, and this is going to be just an overview of what you just saw. So the funding application, the section, there's a needs assessment section. Those questions are not scored. And like I said, it's giving you a overview of the need for that community. The second is the planning tool. So those are prompts 1 through 7. The program components are prompts 8 through 20. And all of those prompts 1 through 20 will be scored. You will also be able to review that licensure, the food requirement, any type of the assurances, and that's that partnership agreement information. That's what they mean by assurances, as well as the equitable services. And that is a federal requirement that no non-public school student should be excluded. So, any questions on the funding application? Great. Next slide. And I think I'm done. Maybe. I think so.
Yes, you are, Nina. Thank you so much for taking time to address questions and information regarding the fiscal piece, allowable and unallowable expenses, as well as walking through the actual application in the CCIP, which many of you have already been exposed to this year because you completed your calibrations in advance. So thank you very much. And I don't think there are any additional questions. Linda Sowell, I just answered your question in the chat. So now moving forward, we're going to open up the floor for Dr. Bill Lohman. He is our independent contractor. He has been doing this work for many, many years, and we thank him again for his time in supporting our grant review process again this year. So Dr. Lohman, it is your time. Take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, I think you can hear me. Just a quick preview of what we're going to talk about here. Most of you have seen this before. There are a few small changes to the application. And one of the things that we do is we want to make sure that all the readers have the same understanding as they read and review the applications. And because of that, we go through this again. You can check me for reliability because you've probably heard this before because you have read before. And the reason you are reading this year is because you've scored very high as a reader. So let's begin. And the first thing we want to do is to talk about the need for consistency and fairness. We want to give each applicant a fair and equal opportunity to receive funding. And part of that process involves the reading and scoring of these applications. And we need this scoring to be consistent. The reason you have been chosen as a reader is in the past you have shown consistency. So we're looking for that again. And we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page of the hymnal. So we're going to go through this information. Reader training and proposal selection. The reader training is happening today, and proposal selection will happen as a result of the scores that you provide to each of the applications you read and subsequently score. And just to be clear, we want you to read the application in its entirety and then score. So don't try to read prompt 1 and score prompt 1 and go to prompt 2. Read the entire application and then go back and score. As a hint, you might want to do your scoring outside in your comments, outside of the CCIP, and then enter those into the CCIP at one time, because the session will time out for you if you try to work through, and I know you're familiar with that process. Ethics. Each of us has our own set of ethics as we read and score these applications. We want you to be fair and consistent and not disadvantage a given applicant because you don't like the way they've said something or you don't think this is a good philosophy to use. Use your best sense of professional ethics as you read and score these applications. Content validity of the instrument. That's the scoring rubric. There are 20 prompts. Those 20 prompts have been extracted directly from the application request from the applicant. So there's a one-to-one correspondence between what has been asked of the applicant and the information you are scoring on the scoring rubric. Feedback. You're going to be asked to provide feedback for each of the 20 prompts that you score. We ask you to be as concise and as, what would I call it, descriptive as you can be as you describe what your score and feedback consist of. We're looking for consistency between the comment you make and the score you give. So if they have a real strong application and then you give it a score of 4 or 5, and then your comment is negative, there's a disconnect there. Or vice versa, if your score is low and you give positive feedback, there's a disconnect there. So we want your feedback on the comments that you make to be consistent with the score that you give. Capacity building and learning. Each of these applicants learns things about themselves as they develop their application. In addition, you as a reader learn from scoring these applications, and you get ideas, some of which you like, some of which you don't like. And if you think it's a good idea, you can take that back to the farm and use it in your local situation. If you think this is not a good idea, you can learn from that as well. Shared meaning and understanding. As a result of the calibration application, you are beginning to develop shared meaning. And we'll go through some of the prompt scores that you provided on the calibration application. And that's to help us develop some shared meaning and understanding as you then use that information to read and score the applications that you then receive. Next slide. We want you to draw upon your grant review expertise. You have been selected because you've done a good job in the past, and we're anticipating that you do that same good job as you move forward. The evaluations, that is the scores that you give on this 6-point rubric that goes 0 to 5, should be based on the criteria and scoring rubric and should be consistent with that 6-point rubric from 0 to 5, where 0 is the worst thing since square wheels and a score of 5 is the best thing since sliced bread, with all shades of gray in between. We want objective assessments of the assigned applications, which means you give each application a fair and good read using your best professional judgment. Your scores and the comments you make will directly determine who gets funded. Now, just a quick aside here. The program that is used to score these scores that you provide is called Facets. And Facets simultaneously calibrates the items on the scoring rubric, you as readers, and the applications. And it determines the consistency of each of those three facets. It looks at reliability, it looks for discrimination, and it looks for accuracy. And it uses that to simultaneously calibrate you as readers, the scores on the items and the applications. And it orders those from high to low on each facet. And what it then allows us to do is to start at the top of the application scores and work our way down, typically until the money runs out, or till the quality is such that we don't want to fund it. Usually we have more quality applications than we have funding. Next slide. Read all applications entirely before you try to score. Follow all instructions. That's pretty obvious. Review and consider information in the applications only. That is, you can't say, well, I know something about this entity and I know this is what they would do. If they don't tell you they're going to do something, don't assume that it's going to happen. So you can only consider the information that they provide. And you're going to provide both a numerical score for each prompt from 0 to 5, as well as constructive comments with suggestions for improvements or identification of weaknesses. Provide summaries of strengths and weaknesses. And there's an opportunity for you to use a spell check in there, because there's nothing more disturbing to a reader than to see a comment with typos or spelling errors in it. And we hear about that if you don't use the spell check. Treat all applications in a fair and equitable manner, obviously using your best sense of professional ethics. Next. Your scoring comments should coincide with the rating guidelines in the grant review guide. Please follow the FY22 21st Century CCL scoring rubric in Appendix A from the RFA to score based on the guidelines listed per prompt. Again, there are 20 prompts. Next slide. You can see from this slide that there are 20 prompts. It's on a 6-point scale from 0 to 5. And you need to be reading carefully the prompt, because sometimes it says A and B or A or B. So just read those prompts carefully as you go through. Next slide. You want the scores to be consistent with the comments. Comments praise the strengths, critique weaknesses, be specific and descriptive. To say that this was a good response isn't helpful to the applicant, but to say it was good because of A, B, or C, or it was weak because of A, B, or C. So be specific and try to be as descriptive as possible. And the comments must be based on the FY22 scoring rubric. And you can refer to your grant reviewer guide for information there. Next slide.
Dr. Lohman, really quickly before we move on, I wanted to clarify here about the scores being consistent with the comments. We just got a question. Are we to do strengths and weaknesses for every prompt? On the calibration application, I did not do weaknesses if I gave them a 5.
That's okay. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You will need to make a comment for each prompt. You don't have to have strengths and weaknesses. If something is strong, you may not have any weaknesses. If something is weak, you may not have any strengths. So, but you will need to make a response to each prompt on the feedback section.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is, and this is something that we'll reiterate later on, is that if you can differentiate um, strengths and weaknesses, if there aren't any strengths, just say there are no strengths in this prompt or in this section. If there are no weaknesses, you put there are no weaknesses in this section. You need to make sure that the applicant knows what you provided them as feedback and there's no confusion there. If there's a 5 scored, typically that means they addressed the prompt, correctly and with due diligence and excellence. So typically there are no, you shouldn't be providing weaknesses there. So please make sure that that's clear in your response. If there are strengths and weaknesses, please make sure that that's clear. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everyone. Thank you, Dr. Lohman.
Next slide. Characteristics of high quality comments. They're objective. They're specific to the prompt if met or did not meet the criteria. They're analytical. They're written in complete sentences. If you want to make just a phrase in there, that's okay too. It just needs to be clear to the applicant. Think about it this way. If this were your application, what feedback would be helpful to you? Limited information provided in the application. You can't be dragging in specific information outside of what they provided. You need to stick to what they put in the application. Be courteous, professional, and understandable. And this is pretty obvious, but you need to be thinking about the comment you would make. How would it feel if you received that comment? So think about how you're going to phrase things in a way that's professional. Next slide.
Dr. Lohman, we have another question really quick before we move forward. I'd like to see if you can address this. This reader, Nanette, she says she has had responses, especially in prompts 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 that are identical with only the words reading and math different. Is this acceptable if it addresses the prompt?
Yes. Simple question.
Okay, so the answer to your question is yes. Even if the information is identical and they just changed up a few words, if it addresses the prompt, then the answer is yes.
Obviously, you're going to use your best professional judgment there. Does it make sense that that those are the same? Okay,
looking at the data is, yeah.
Characteristics of low quality comments. Too little documentation, saying something that's good or bad or not good or not appropriate. And you need to be politically correct, let me put it that way. Or try not to be repetitive. Sometimes you will say, this is good because of X, or this is not good because of X, or it's not clearly related to the selection criteria, or it's inconsistent with the assigned scores. You know, if something is really good and you give it a 2, they're going to say, wait a minute, you told me this was really good, but you gave it a score of 2. How's that possible? And we do hear from people that say there was an inconsistency here. So just be careful about what you say and how you say it. Inaccuracy based on information in the application, misspelling or grammatical errors. That's where we really hear from people. And it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it doesn't reflect well on you as a reader, and it doesn't reflect well on us as an organization. So check your spelling and your grammar, or you're making judgments outside of the scope of reader responsibility. Again, just use your best professional judgment. You've done that in the past using your best professional judgment. We just ask you to do it again. Next slide. Examples of acceptable comments. The applicant describes their strategies to ensure student improvement. For example, they did X, Y, and Z. A weakness. The applicant's needs assessment demonstrates a great need, but has limited or non-useful information on how to deal with the identified needs. Next slide. Further examples. And sustainability. The applicant provides a clear and convincing sustainability plan, which included elements for long-term success after funds have been exhausted. For example, ... A weakness. The applicant had no evidence listed of other federal, state, or local program funding, as well as the actual use of any in-kind contributions. Again, you're looking for specific information here. Next slide. Reading proposals. Here's the timing. Today, you're going through a lot of information on how to score. You've already done the calibration application. So once you have submitted those scores, they'll be checked to make sure everything is up to speed there. And then you will start being assigned applications to read. And we'll show you a timeline here shortly, about 2 weeks to read and follow the process. Follow the reading, we'll have to resolve any discrepancies. You'll be contacted if you have discrepancies to resolve, and you're going to be using the CCIP to read and score the applications. As I mentioned previously, you might want to read and score using the CCIP, but not entering the scores as you go, but write them down and then write the comments down, maybe on a Word processing system, and then upload that into the feedback for each prompt. It'll save you a lot of time, and the system won't time out on you. But you're going to be using the CCIP to read and score the applications. And you can print the application and read it offline. Next slide. There are going to be at least 3 readers per proposal. And we use that because if we only needed one perspective, we'd only need 1 reader. But we want multiple perspectives here. These are going to be independent readings. You're not going to know, at least up front, who the other 2 or more readers are unless you have to resolve discrepancies. So these by process will be independent readings. And we will be resolving discrepancies. You'll be contacted after the 2-week window to resolve any further discrepancies, and we ask you to do that in a fair and equitable manner. To resolve a discrepancy, we're going to be looking for the scores of the 3 readers for each prompt to be within 2 points of each other. So if Char gives it a 5 and Charmaine gives it a 2 and I give it a 3, we're not going to be in sync there. So we could get in sync by Char changing her score to a 4 or Charmaine changing her score to a 3, and then would be within 2 points of each other on a given prompt. And sometimes, most times, it's pretty easy to resolve those discrepancies after you have a conversation, either through email or on a phone chat. But every once in a while, you'll find that the readers can't agree. You would come to a point where I say, over my dead body, am I going to change my score? And you say, well, I'm not changing mine either. In that case, you can agree to disagree. But that should be the exception rather than the rule, because most discrepancies can be resolved. Next slide, please. Leniency, severity of readers. Since you've read in the past, your leniency or severity score is within normal limits. That's why you've been asked back. But every once in a while, we find a reader who's way out there on the leniency side or way out there on the severity side. We do reserve the right not to use your scores. However, that's not likely to happen. And because we do have a range of leniency severity, we will adjust for that. So the program, the FACET program, will take your reader score, determine your leniency or severity, whichever it happens to be. And if you're lenient, it'll take your scores and adjust them down a little bit. If you're a severe reader, it'll take your scores and adjust them up a little bit. Now, the program is good, but it doesn't work miracles. So again, if you're way out there on either side, we do reserve the right not to use your scores. And in technical terms, if you're a wacko, we're not going to use your scores. But that's not likely to happen because we've seen how you've scored in the past. We've welcomed you back again because you've been consistent as well as not overly severe or overly lenient. Idiosyncratic perspectives of readers. We each come to this with our own education, our own set of experiences, and our own set of skills. If we only needed one perspective, we'd only need one reader. But we don't just want one perspective, we want at least three perspectives. And we want those to come together with some common set of understanding of what we're looking for and to then read and score these applications. So we're looking for those perspectives. Length of the applications. The CCIP constrains the length of the applications. Each section cannot be more than 4,000 characters long. If it is, the CCIP will not accept the input. So they'll have to reduce the number of characters on that section in order to be within 4,000. So you're not going to see a 300-page application because the CCIP will constrain the length of each section. Therefore, it will constrain the length of the overall applications. Now, that's both good and bad. It's good because it gives a consistent format for everybody so that somebody doesn't write 300-page proposal. It's not good because it limits the amount of specificity that a person can put in any one section of their response. Sometimes a person has more to say in a given area and less to say in other areas, and they'll try to sneak that information in other areas of the application. So that's why we ask you to read the entire application first before you try to score. Next slide, please. Disclosure of conflict of interest. We've asked you up front if you have a potential conflict of interest with any application or to identify potential areas where you might have a conflict of interest. Some of those things cannot be identified before you actually see the applications you're going to score, because we can't possibly know who you have contacts with out in the field before you see the application that has been submitted. So after you receive the applications, do a quick scan of which applications you've received and see if you have a conflict of interest there. If you do, contact Charmaine. There are plenty of applications to go around. She'll take that one away from you and assign another one to you so that you don't lose money by identifying the conflict of interest. So you'll contact Charmaine if you have a potential conflict after you see the applications you've been assigned. And again, I'm going to repeat, we do reserve the right to eliminate readers for cause. I've been doing this for more than 25 years, and in that period of time, we've eliminated 10 or fewer readers, which means the likelihood of being eliminated for cause is terribly small. But we do reserve the right in case we find a problem. Because you've done this before, you're not likely to be eliminated for cause. So we just do reserve that right, just alerting you in advance. Next slide. Awards are based on the quality of the applications. You, as a reader, are going to directly determine which applications get funded by your scores. We're going to take your scores and adjust it for item ease and difficulty, reader leniency severity, and use that to calibrate the application quality. We'll start at the top of that list and work our way down until one of two things happen. Either the quality wanes to the point we don't want to fund any below that, or we run out of money. Usually what happens is we run out of money before we run out of quality applications. But that's going to be based directly on your scores. We're going to ask you to make judgments. How many judgments are we going to ask you to make? 20. One judgment for each prompt. And that judgment is going to be a score between 0 and 5. Discriminations and flatlining. We're going to ask you to make a discrimination using that 6-point scale. I'm pretty sure you can distinguish between a 5 and a 2 or a 4 and a 1. But don't get all hung up trying to discriminate between a 3 and a 4 or a 4 and a 5. Use your best judgment, pick one, and move forward. And stay away from what I call flatlining. This is flatlining. If we look at the profile of your scores on the 20 prompts, if we see 19 3s and 1 4, you're probably not being discriminating enough. Most applications have stronger sections and weaker sections. So if a section is strong, give it a higher score. If a section is weak, give it a lower score. I expect to see variability in the profile of your prompts for a given application. Now that doesn't mean your score is going to bounce between 0 and 5 and 0 and 5, but I do expect to see some variability in your scores across the 20 prompts. Every once in a while, you'll find one that's super good. So it might have a lot of 5s in it. Or one that's super bad, it might have a lot of 1s or 0s in it. But that would be the exception rather than the rule. Most applications have variability in the quality they will have across the items. Next slide, please. Scoring rubrics. You have a scoring rubric that's made up of 20 prompts.
Call from 61508554700.
Sorry about that. The scoring prompts have, there are 20 of them. And you're going to give a score of 0 to 5 for each of those 20 items or the number required. There might be 1 or 2 items that aren't scored in option 2 or option 3. You have the calibration application. You've already scored it. We're going to take a look at that here momentarily to see how you scored the calibration application to help you get centered, if you will, in terms of how other people scored that prompt as you did. Next slide, please. Timeline. Today's the 15th. It's the grant reader training. The CCIP closed on the 28th. You have 2 weeks to complete your scoring. And please don't wait until the 30th to submit your scores if you're doing along. And don't try to read everything the last day, because it won't work. Discrepancy resolution will be for a week, July 2 through 9. And we're not anticipating a lot of discrepancy resolution, but there will be some, I'm sure. So here's this 3-week window we're dealing with of reading, scoring, and then resolving discrepancies. Here's our timeline. Please adhere to it and do your reading sooner rather than later. Next slide. This is all going to be done remotely. We're doing electronic processing, and as you know, we're using the CCIP to do this. You must have a comment for each prompt. If you don't have a comment for each prompt, the CCIP will not let you save what you've done. You will be notified if discrepancy needs to be resolved. Hopefully, knock on wood here, that this will not be too tedious or too time consuming. We expect this to go pretty rapidly, particularly because you're experienced readers. Next slide, please. Eliminating discrepancies. Discrepancies among readers will be resolved directly by email first. Unresolved discrepancy will result in a conference call on July 14th as needed. If we don't contact you, you have no discrepancies to resolve. And remember, a discrepancy is the three readers have scores that are more than 2 points apart. During a call, all three readers will discuss their findings and explain their scores. So if you give something a score of 2, you better have a reason for giving it a score of 2. If you give something a 4, you better have a reason. What did you find in the application that prompted you to give it a score of 4 or prompted it to give it a score of 0? If you gave it a score of 0, there shouldn't be any information on that. So you have to be able to defend your score in a non-critical fashion. Based on discussion, readers may reduce separation scores to 2 points or less. Selected readers will enter revised scores into the CCIP, but no later than noon on July 9th, 2021. And as I said, you may agree to disagree, but that should be the exception rather than the rule. So the CCIP will close for a period of time, and then we'll open it back up later to allow you to do the revised scores as needed. Next slide. Scoring process. Obviously, we're going to use the CCIP. You already have an account because you couldn't submit your calibration scores without having an account. You provided the scores in the CCIP, and so you're already familiar with that process, not only from the calibration application, but from the process you used in the previous year or years.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Loebman, so much for your expertise and coming back to support this part of the process. We're going to, before we go into the next part, which is going to be looking at your calibration data and the comments that you provided there, we're going to take a quick break to give you guys a chance to stretch, to grab a drink, use the restroom. It is 12:02. If you guys could be back here no later than 12:09, 12:10, then we're going to go ahead and finish out the rest of the training. So please, we have 56 reviewers on the line. One did have to call in, so that person's name won't show up. But we ask that you all please do your best to be back by 12:10 so we can continue to move forward with the training. Thank you. 12:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 9:10 a.m. for those in the Pacific, the Pacific Standard Time. Thank you. All right, we got one more minute and then we're going to continue moving forward. All right. we are going to keep moving because we have a bit more to get through before we end the training. But before we move on, I wanted to address some things that were put in the chat while we were on break. So there was a question from Kristen regarding what was stated during the training, that applicants are expected to provide all necessary information to score the prompt within the allotted section for that prompt. We are now hearing the opposite. So Shar provided clarification to that, and it was stated earlier that you should be reading the entire application to ensure that you understand what the applicant is proposing, but you are scoring the information that is in each prompt. Because again, we just went through that earlier with the indicators and things. That's what they are addressing in each prompt. So that's what you should be scoring. And I hope that clarifies that question. I don't want there to be any confusion moving forward from this regarding that. So again, to reiterate, Kristen, please see Shar's prompt in the chat. Nina also put in per the discussion earlier about competitive priority. If you have an applicant that applies for one of the 3 competitive priorities that were listed, please look at the corresponding prompts. So for positive youth development, they should be that should be prompt 5 that you are looking to provide any comments there if they apply for that competitive priority. If they apply for the family engagement priority, you should be providing your comments and scores for prompt 6. And if they provided a competitive priority for high school, please use prompt 18 to provide your comments and scores there. Okay, so Kristen, you are asking a question per Dr. Lohman. So Dr. Lohman, Kristen is asking because you stated that they should be including information from other prompts, and we're saying that they should be addressing the prompt that they are scoring. Can you please confirm that? Because I don't want there to be any confusion moving forward from this training. Thank you.
I assume you can hear me.
Yes.
No. Okay. I'm not sure I'm getting feedback here.
We can hear you. I don't hear anything.
Okay. What I was trying to say was that there's information contained in the application in various sections.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're going to score according to the prompt, but there might be information elsewhere in the application that is relevant to that
Mm-hmm.
prompt.
Mm-hmm.
You need to think about that as you read. That's why I ask you to read the entire application before you try to score.
Thank you for that clarification. So to be clear, you are reading the entire application to understand what the applicant is proposing. You are scoring the application in each prompt. You are scoring the information in each prompt. But there may be information in other parts of the application that you will need, such as partnership agreement information or the competitive priority information. Again, those areas are not necessarily in the prompt that you're scoring, but you may need to refer to them to get understanding on how to score the prompt that you are referring to. So that is what Dr. Lohman is saying, and that's what we expect. So in general, you are scoring each prompt based on the information that you are reviewing in that prompt, but you may have to look at other parts of the application to ensure that you are scoring that prompt correctly. Thank you, Dr. Lohman. Kristen, does that answer your question? All right, we're going to continue to move forward. Now we are looking at the CCIP, which stands for Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan. This is a unified grants application and verification system. And this is where you will be essentially scoring, reviewing and scoring your assigned 21st century applications. All right, so we're going to do a brief walkthrough again. You've already done this per the scoring of your calibration application. And I provided these slides to you as part of that process, but we're going to do this really quickly again. First, you're going to log into your OHID account, and this is the screen that you should see. Next, you are going to, if this comes up on your screen, you're going to launch your OHID application store. This may just be for internal employees, but in the case that you need to access your application store, this is how you would do that. Next, within the OHID, you can choose from your application systems for which you have approved access, and this will be on your My Sites and Applications page. What we found out, which caused a little confusion this year, was that the location of the CCIP is not on the first page of your My Sites and Applications. It's actually you have to use this arrow here that I circled to move over a few pages to find the CCIP or planning and grants application for you to access. So again, if you log in and the CCIP application does not show up on the first page of your My Sites and Applications page, please use this arrow that is circled here to move to the next pages over.
Yeah, keep in mind that it may not say CCIP for you. It will say planning and grants.
Yes.
As the heading.
Thank you. And I did put that here in this box because it says CCIP for us, but for you all, it will say planning and grant CCIP. When you're looking into your grant score inbox, when you log into your CCIP, this is where your applications will be housed. Tabitha, if you haven't already, she has begun assigning your applications, so you should start getting those notifications via email. So once you are completed with this training, you can begin reading your applications, and this is where you will find them. Next, you are going into your inbox to find your applications. You will need to make sure that you are selecting fiscal year 2022. Otherwise, you will be going into previous years in those applications that you've previously scored. Once you go into your inbox and you are looking at your applications, please click on the application number here to open your application. Some important information here. When you are looking at each application, you are first confirming that you have no conflict of interest. If you have a conflict of interest, please notify me immediately to determine if a reassignment is needed at that time. I will work with Tabitha to do so, and we will inform you if we can reassign and also provide you an application to replace the one that you are being reassigned or that you are reassigned. You are also agreeing to complete, so please make sure you're marking yes. And if you have completed your application scoring, you're going to click true. I noticed that some of the calibrations did not have that marked. You need to make sure that you are marking true as completed, because on the back end, when we're collecting our, when we're pulling our data files, some of that information may not transfer over if you do not mark this true. So please make sure you're following this page to ensure that you are completing those as part of your applications. As far as reading the application, each application includes both fiscal and program information. So again, make sure you are looking at the budget and then following up with looking at the budget narrative within the application to confirm what's being placed there. And then as far as your program information content, you are also looking at that as well as part of your read. Reviewers can read applications online, or as Dr. Lohman stated, you can also print out a copy for you to use as a hard copy, which I know some of you do. I like that preference myself. So, okay, regarding scoring, each application requires a score and reason for the conclusion that you came up with or your comment, and it should coincide with the general rating guidelines. And that was mentioned back on slide 27. You can also find the rating guidelines within your grant reviewer guide. And in the Appendix A of the RFA as far as the scoring rubric. And this is where you will find that. And these are not the actual the scoring guidelines. This is just an example of that. And then you're going to put here your reason for conclusion. Required documentation, as previously stated, all applicants are required to upload a signed partnership agreement and non-public consultation form under the related grant application documents. They also need to provide the needs assessment data if the competitive priority areas that they selected require that. So again, at least the signed partnership agreement and the non-public consultation form need to be included. But if they also provided information in competitive priority, they may have been required to provide a needs assessment. This is the most important part of this. Please make sure that you are saving along the way. The recommendation is as you complete each prompt that you're saving along the way, because not only because of time, but again, with internet and different things, you want to make sure that your work is being saved. And as previously mentioned by Dr. Loman as well, if you want to use a separate Word document to do your work offline, that will be the best way to ensure that your work is being saved. The scoring rubric attachment, the Word document that you were sent, is a replica of what's in the system. If you would like to use that as part of your work and completing your scoring and your comments, and then you would just transfer that information over to the CCIP. Again, you're doing that. When you get to the bottom, you are clicking yes that you have scored this application and it is complete. If you haven't done so, meaning if you are saving along the way and then you say, okay, I'm at prompt 5 and I need to stop here, you're going to click no and save it. That way you know that that application you need to go back to that. But if it's completely done, you're going to click yes and save. And then you will go back to your grant scorer inbox. So, and as a reminder, you are able to save portions or the entire document, just making sure you select yes or no, depending on where you are in that application. Tracking your progress. Again, as you are completing your work, it's going to be recorded under number of rubrics scored. So it's going to be out of 20. So as you save along the way, you'll notice that the numbers will continue to increase as you complete your work. But the goal for each application is for it to say 20 out of 20 here. When the application is completely scored and saved, this column would read true. Please make sure of that when you are scoring your applications. And continue to work through your inbox until all of your assigned applications have been completed. As well, you will only have 30 minutes at a time in the CCIP. If you notice the time is winding down, please make sure your work is being saved. We cannot stress that enough because once it hits 0, you will lose any work if it is not saved. Okay, Dr. Lohman, if you could come back and talk about the scoring process, please. Thank you.
I assume you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The assignment of proposals. Proposals are assigned reasonably randomly. When I say reasonably, it's random except for when you identify a conflict of interest, then that's removed from you. So that stops the randomization for that particular application, but they're assigned at random. By doing that, it also means that you may get an application where you have an identified conflict of interest. So we will try to minimize that, but they're random assignment. You will get your assignments through the CCIP. There'll be a subset there, somewhere between 6 and 8, I'm assuming. And we're asking you to sign a confidentiality. I assume we're asking you to sign a confidentiality agreement, but you have to treat this information as confidential, including your scores. So you can't go out and say, okay, I read this application from applicant X, and you should see what they said, or did you see the salaries they put in? This is confidential information. Please use your best professional judgment as you read and use this information.
Dr. Loman, really quick for clarification, the confidentiality, it was acknowledged as part of certification in your application.
Got it. They do that within the CCIP.
No, there was the reader application that they submitted in advance of being selected. That was, it was a part of that application.
But they also do it in the CCIP when they read that, when they score the application. It says, do you have a conflict of interest? And they have to say no.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there are actually 3 different times when we check that. 1, when they apply to be a reader, 2 in CCIP, and 3 when they actually see the applications themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've already read the scoring rubric because you had to use that to score the calibration application. This is a time to ask questions about the scoring rubric. Do you, as a reader, have any questions about items on the scoring rubric? If you do, use the chat box to ask the question.
Dr. Lohman, I don't see anything at this time. All right, we can continue to move forward.
Okay, there are 2 calibration applications, one of which you as a reader have been assigned. You have been assigned to option 2 applications. You would have read application 354. If you're an option 3 reader, you have been assigned application 355. You will not be reading applications across options. So if you've been assigned to option 2, you're only going to be reading option 2 applications. If you've been assigned to option 3, you're only going to be assigned option 3 applications. That's important as we continue this discussion, because we're going to bounce back and forth between responses to option 2 and responses to option 3 prompts. Now, as we go through this discussion, if you have questions, put them in the chat box and we'll respond to them. Next slide, please.
All right.
The number of items to be scored per application. We don't have any option 1 applications, so that's out. In option 2, you're going to score 18 items. You're not going to score prompts 18 and 19. If you're reading option 3, you're going to score 19 items. You're not going to score prompt 19. Now, because you're not scoring there, you still have to enter a score. The score you will enter is a 6. So if you're reading option 2 and you get to item 18, you're going to enter a 6. You're going to enter a 6 in item 19. If you're reading option 3, when you get to item 19 or prompt 19, you're going to enter a 6. You will also have to put in a comment. The comment you put in is simply NA, not applicable. That will satisfy the comment for prompts 18 and 19 on option 2 and prompt 19 on option 3. Any questions about that before we go on?
Dr. Lohman, so I know this question came up earlier, so I wanted to clarify this. Someone asked for those prompts that they don't address, that they put what the score would be, and I believe we responded 0, and now we're saying it's 6. And it appears that they can only go up to 5 in the as part of the score. So I wanted to make sure that, again, we're not confusing our reviewers. They can't, I don't think they can score 6 this year. I think it just goes up to 5. So what are they going to put there?
Okay, so Charmaine, you need to, if you go to the system, it will give you what the options are.
and it will tell you what 0 is equal to. It will tell you what 6 is equal to for each of those prompts. So you may want to just go in directly versus having people guess to see what's actually in there.
And they should not put a 0 in on prompt 18 or 19 because the system will read that as a 0.
Okay. And I apologize. Okay. So let's continue to move forward. And again, we can ensure that. Okay, so Linda Sowell is saying that there is no number 6. It says in A. Yes. So again, we cannot see on our end what's actually in the scoring rubric at this time, but we are getting confirmation that readers for the prompts that that they're not answering can put in A. Is that instead of the number 6 that you're referring to? Is that appropriate, Dr. Lohman?
If the system will take it.
Okay, because if you, yes,
they still have to put in a comment there. The
yes.
comment should be NA.
Okay, so to clarify, everyone, let's make clear before we move on. If you have a prompt that you are not addressing, that you can't address, you're going to select NA as your score and put NA in the comment section for that particular prompt. Thank you, everyone, for confirming that. Thank you. And and someone says those 2 questions do supply number 6. Okay.
So if that 6 is allowed, put a 6 in.
Okay, so NA or 6. So if there is a 6 there, put a 6. If there's an NA, put an NA for those prompts that you are not supposed to score. And then put NA as your comment. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to the calibration application polling questions. Dr. Lohman, here's prompt 1.
Okay, you can see prompt 1, and won't spend a lot of time reading this, but what we're going to do is differentiate between those reading option 2 and option 3. Next slide will make this clear. Okay, this is prompt 1 for option 2 only. This is how you as readers actually scored this prompt. You can see that most people gave it a score of 2. 2 people gave it a score of 5. 4 people gave it a score of 4. And 3 people gave it a score of 3. So if this were the actual score, those who gave it a 5 and those who gave it a 2 would have to resolve a discrepancy. We actually have pretty good agreement on this because we have 2s, 3s, and 4s. No need to resolve that. So the 2 and the 5 would be the ones who would have to resolve. So you could, if you have read on the calibration application option 2, 354, this is how your fellow readers scored it. This should help you calibrate your scores.
All right.
All right, next slide.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so thank you. I also provided comments for those that were assigned the option 2 calibration. I just pulled a few comments that were very clear and concise. And this one, for the first one, this person scored a 2. And they provided the strength that the applicant described strategies to demonstrate improvements in reading achievement by providing tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions, and so on. The weakness They were clear in saying that the absence of relevant information on how improved academic performance will address social benefits, disciplinary action, and school attendance makes it difficult to access the impact of the program as described. So again, when we're talking about comments aligning with the scores, this is a good example of that. And then of a person that scored a 3. The identified an assessment that will be used to determine baseline placement to ensure overall, and the students will be grouped into 3 tiers to ensure appropriate levels of aids. That they did not adequately describe specific strategies or activities that will be implemented to ensure the students will move from basic to proficiency. So although they had it in place that they knew how to determine placement, the specific strategies or activities were not clear. So this was a great comment to help the applicant know where they could have done better. And again, we ask that you differentiate as much as possible the strengths and the weaknesses. This is to help the applicant understand what they did well and what they needed to improve. All right.
Next slide.
Option 3.
All right, now, this is for people who read option 3 only. This is application 355. You can see there's really good agreement on the scores here, 3s, 4s, and 5s, with predominant one being 4. So you don't see any outlier here. And let's take a look, Charmaine, at the comments.
What I liked about this, the first set of,
go ahead.
No, really quickly, and I'll let you take over, but I just wanted to note that this reader pulled language from the rubric to justify their comment in the score. So that's what I loved about this. I didn't see this much, but this person, stated that there was moderate evidence to support the prompt so that the applicant understands this is why they scored their 3, because it's from the rubric. So yeah, go ahead, Dr. Loman, sorry.
No. This just gives you a sense of what other two of the other readers saw for this option 3 prompt number 1. So you get a sense then of how you scored, if you read option 3, how you scored this and how this corresponds to what you might have said or the score you might have given it. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah,
right,
so I just,
Charmaine.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to say again, these are just some examples of some very clear comments that supported the scores that they shared for this prompt of option 3. So again, and we provided some brief examples before, but these are clear examples from an actual application calibration that was read. So please feel free to use these as guides as part of your experience reading this year. Moving on.
All right, here's prompt 2. So we're going to look at prompt 2. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at option 2 responses, and then we're going to look at option 3 responses. So next slide. You can see here that there's a little bit more variation here. There's a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. You see the predominant responses are 4s and 5s. So if one person gave it a 2 and another person in the group gave it a 5, we'd have to resolve that discrepancy. We could do that by having the person who gave it a 2 move up to a 3 or more, or the person who gave it a 5 move down to a 4 or both. But would need to resolve that discrepancy. Now again, this is option 2. And let's look at the comments.
So again, these are great examples of comments that were provided here. For the second comment that's listed here, I noticed in the feedback that we got from the calibrations that many of you picked up that this applicant did not show how They're 100% of their sites would deliver quality enrichment opportunities in reading. So I wanted to note that. Great catch, everybody. I noticed that in many of those that did provide feedback that read option 2. To go back to what Dr. Lohman was saying as far as resolving discrepancies, as a reminder, if you have to make a change to your score from what you originally scored, please make sure that your comments align with that change in the discrepancy process. Always make sure of that. And to ensure that, when the applicant's reading this, they're like, this is not what I'm reading, or they're confused about what the comment says because their score doesn't align. So please make sure if you make any changes from what you originally submitted during the calibration process, that the score and the comments are in alignment.
Okay, we're moving on. We're moving on. This is prompt number 2 for option 3 readers, application 355. Notice that the predominant scores are 3s and 4s. We have a couple 5s and we have a 1. Those are pretty discrepant. We have pretty good agreement, but we have this 1 and a couple 5s. So to resolve this, we got to be moving either the 1 up to a 3, the 5 down to a 4, and the 1 up to a 2. But we'd have to do a little adjustment to make sure that we're not discrepant. But again, we have pretty good agreement here. This can help you as a reader calibrate your scoring. Let's look at the comments. Charmaine, take this.
Thank you. So again, with the strengths and weaknesses, the readers that provided these comments were very detailed as far as what the applicant's strengths were, and provided examples of that. And then if there are any weaknesses, then they were clearing that as well. Like the first comment, the applicant does not directly address the prompt's requirement that provides 2 hours of reading enrichment per week. A few of you caught that and noted that in your weaknesses. They also mentioned that it discusses relevant research more than it explains it will do. The second comment talked about how the applicant provided a number of learning scenarios, which is great because, again, it shows that they're being intentional about the program that they're proposing. But the weaknesses, unfortunately, they could have probably gotten a 5 had they provided something much stronger. It says research that supports the concept that students learn by preference would be important to include, as there is not a common agreement in literature about the usefulness of learning styles. So again, basically this reader is saying that the research that they provided was not clear as far as supporting the usefulness of the learning style that they propose in their strengths. So again, you guys are on the right track when it comes to providing supporting comments for the scores that you are adding to those prompts in the application. Now we're moving on to prompt 5.
Here's prompt 5, the objective and the indicators. Now let's look at the scores. This is again only for option 2. So if you're an option 2 reader on prompt 5, you'll notice that there's a kind of a U shape here on the responses between moderate evidence and clear and convincing evidence. So 9 people in each of those 2 end categories. We have pretty good agreement here. No need to resolve any discrepancies, but you can just see how the scores varied here. Let's look at the comments.
So here for the comments, again, very clear. The first comment talks about how the applicant provided detailed discussion of the programs, but they lost a point because it doesn't mention strategies that will be used to address homework completion, class participation, and so on. The second comment provided detail on how the applicant provided rationale to meet their goals. And because there were no weaknesses, they identified that there were any, and that's because they gave them a score of 5. So again, I noticed that some of you all put weaknesses as part of a score with a prompt with a score of 5, please note that if they score a 5 in a prompt, that means they addressed everything they were supposed to address. So there should be no weaknesses, and you should identify that there were no weaknesses there. So I just want to be clear on that. Moving on to the next one.
All right, then this is just for option 3, application 355, prompt 5. You see we have 2 5s, and we have 4 2s, and we have 4 3s. A little more variability there. The predominant response is a 4. And now let's look at, we'd have to resolve discrepancies between a 5 and a 2, obviously.
Yep.
But let's look at the comments.
Okay, so this first score of this first comment, there were some strengths there, but it was really stressed that they had a lot of weaknesses. So the strategies were discussed very generally. They didn't go into detail as to, you know, how things were going to be done. And so this person gave them a 2. But it looks like the next comment, they saw things a little differently, and they gave more detail pulled from this as the applicant did better in providing that information, but they did note a weakness, and so that's why they didn't get a 5, they got a 4. So again, that's what the discrepancy process is for, to resolve those types of things that come up. So now we're at prompt 6.
Prompt 6, okay. Let's go to the data.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 3s, we have 12 4s, and we have 8 5s. Pretty good agreement, predominant scores of 4. Let's look at the comments.
So again, this was, I picked, you know, some comments that were very clear and succinct. The applicant was persuasive in explaining how family engagement would allow opportunities for families. And then they gave detail on how that worked. But they did get a 4 because they didn't indicate the consequence or strategy to engage parents who were not participating. And that is important. So with the second comment, again, they were very detailed in why this applicant was strong in this area. And because of that, there were no weaknesses identified, so they gave them a 5.
Just a comment here. You notice, I may just go back to that those comments. You notice here that their comments aren't exactly the same, and the scores aren't exactly the same. We shouldn't necessarily expect each scorer to give exactly the same score as another scorer. That's why we have multiple perspectives. It doesn't mean someone who gave it a 5 is right and someone who gave it a 4 is wrong, or someone who gave it a 4 is right and someone who gave it a 5 is wrong. It just means it's a different perspective, and you need to keep remembering that as you move forward. Thank you. Next slide. Again, this is prompt 6 for option 3. A little more variability here. The score of 3 is the predominant score with 7 people. 6 people gave it a 4, and 5 people gave it a 5, and it looks like 2 people gave it a 2. Okay, a little more variability. We'd have to resolve discrepancies between the 2s and the 5s, but generally good agreement here. This, by doing this, this should help you as readers calibrate your scoring. And let's go to the comments here.
Okay, again, good comments here. The strengths for the first one, they provided examples of how this applicant described their strategies for family engagement, but they took away a point because they mentioned that parents will be encouraged. There's no clear plan on how they would ensure participation or attendance. That's important to note. If you are planning programs and you don't have a plan of action on how to recruit and retain parents in their participation, then that would make one question, and that's something that is required. So please make sure that you're noting those types of things, and that's why this person gave them a 4. And again, this person here, the second set of comments, again, very detailed in providing why they gave them a 5, and as a result, there were no weaknesses identified. And again, these are really great references to use as you are going through your reads this year. Again, this is different from last year, and I thank you all for bearing with us as we incorporated this new piece into our process. And I hope this is helpful for you as you navigate through this year's grant read. And here we are at prompt number 20.
Excuse me. Prompt number 20 is a new item. So
yes,
let's take a look at the scores. You can see a couple 2s, 6 3s, 8 4s, and 7 5s. Pretty good agreement. Again, we'd have to resolve the discrepancy between the 2s and the 5s.
mm-hmm.
But generally good agreement. Let's look at the comments. This is for option 2 again.
Yeah, so this is option 2. And again, I wanted to note that many of you caught that this applicant wanted to offer well over the 100 hours required, which is a great catch. Again, that's just the minimum requirement, but because the program is offering more and they explain how they're going to do that, that will warrant a decent, if not high score. And I highlighted some pieces of that I thought were helpful. But they also took a point away because they felt like they would have liked to see a more expansive description of the role of family engagement as part of summer. And then with this last comment, they provided clear family engagement activities and provided examples of what they look like. And because of that, again, they gave them a 5, which means they had no weaknesses identified. And here are option 3 scores.
Here's option 3 scores. You see pretty good agreement. Predominant scores of 4. No need to resolve any discrepancies here. Just a side comment here. We tried something a little different this year by giving you the calibration application in advance to read. So we wouldn't have to take the time during the session to have you read and score. But it also gave us the opportunity to get the feedback to share with you how your fellow readers scored and to see some comments. And this is a trade-off in terms of the process we used this year. And we did it because we had experienced readers. I'm not sure we would have tried this if we had inexperienced readers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Let's go to the comments.
So I pulled a couple. One was a 3 and one was a 5. Although they had a number of strengths here, the weaknesses here are noted that are, there were some things that were missing. And if you're following the rubric, then that's how you will determine what the score will be. You always, when you are, and this is what I was told previously, in my experience, you should always have your materials in front of you when you're reading application. That includes your RFA, your grant reviewer guide, in your scoring rubric to ensure that as you're reading, that they are addressing the prompts correctly and that you are scoring and providing comments that align with their responses. So again, these are just some examples of some comments that were succinct, but also supported their score that they gave the applicant for each prompt. And here are some helpful hints that you all shared and a little updated from last year. But again, the number one thing, save your answers every few minutes and watch the time clock. You only get 30 minutes each round. So if you feel like that time is winding down, please save and continue to move forward. Try to use applicants' responses to actual prompts to craft your score and your comments. Before reading the grant application, check the program time, all the data that you see in the beginning of the application. Please check all of that to ensure items are aligned, including the budget, with parameters in the grant. And then again, using a Word document or the scoring rubric that was provided to record your responses, then you copy and paste your responses into the CCIP, hitting save after that. Just making sure that you are saving your work along the way to ensure you're successful during this process. I'm actually, because of the sake of, it's 12:53 Eastern Standard Time. We normally would have given you all an opportunity to share additional helpful hints. We're not going to allow that verbally during this time, but if you have some additional hints you would like to share in the chat that were not shared here, please do so. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to continue to keep moving forward. You received this information in your welcome email, but we're going to reiterate it is imperative that you follow the process as stated within the attached documentation and the training, especially the timeline. There were a few people that were, had some issues with submitting the calibration on time, and that's understandable. We've had conversations about that, but please be sure that you are following the timeline. The application, the CCIP will close on June 30 at the stated time. So we ask you to please space your time out to getting these applications done on or before the date specified to ensure that we're staying on task. As a reminder about the discrepancy resolution process, you may receive more than one email related to that, depending on how many discrepancies you have to resolve. We will then send out the updated grant reviewer guide with questions from this training today, along with the recording. As soon as we get access to the recording, our communications department has to upload that to YouTube. So once we get that information, we'll follow up with that in email with any other clarification that's needed at that time. So again, here is the rest of the timeline. You'll have 2 weeks starting today to get your applications completed by 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 30. The discrepancy process, if you can please, if you have any discrepancies, resolve them as soon as possible. July 9th is the absolute deadline, but we would prefer you do it sooner than that. So please work with those that you are included on the email with discrepancies to resolve those as soon as possible. And July 14th would be any discrepancy process meetings that would be required to resolve them. We already did the calibrations. This was from last year, and I apologize for not removing that, but we're good. Everyone has done their calibrations, so you should have already started receiving notifications noting that your assigned applications are hitting your grant score inbox. And again, as stated previously, the department reserves the right to reassign applications as needed. Please be sure to begin inputting your application data no later than June 23rd. At which time we will just send out a gentle reminder that you are to start that process. Tabitha last year sent out emails for those that had not started that process to remind you of where you are as far as completing that work. We again just want to make sure that we are on task. Please do not wait till the week of or the day of to start inputting your information, because as in the past, the CCIP with the number of users can slow down. And in saving your work, it could delay that process. So please space out your work as much as possible to ensure that you are completing your work. Option 2 reviewers, you will be receiving 7 applications each. Option 3 reviewers, you will be receiving 8 applications each. For those that previously emailed Tabitha that you were able to review extra applications, you may be receiving an additional application as part of that work. So please note that. And this does not include your calibration. This is just the live applications you will be assigned as part of the competition. As a reminder, to help eliminate readers that are, the process that we're doing here helps eliminate those readers that are considered noisy, which are scores that are too scattered or all over the place, and that can create issues with our fastest process. And that's why we ask you not to wait to the last minute, because you rushing to get information in can affect the data that comes out as part of our fastest process. If you are found to be pushing the deadline or the timeline without formal communication to our program office, we have the right to reassign your applications and have justification to remove you from the pool so that you can no longer participate. Again, it's important that you stay on task and communicate with our office as needs arise. If you need assistance with applications being assigned or reassigned, please let us know. We will help you with that. But we want you to be successful in completing your work throughout this process. So we just want to make sure that you understand that part of it. Please communicate with myself, CC Tabitha, in advance if you are not able to complete your applications. And we already, many of you have already reached out to Tabitha if you wanted to receive additional applications. Please take your time to review your reads and connect with our office with questions. Again, I stress that because we've had folks that don't reach out, and we're following up, sending multiple emails or calling you to ask your status. We need you to start at least, gradually getting your work done so that we know that you are going to complete that in a timely manner. Rosemary, if you are reading option 2, you are receiving 7 applications. If you're reading option 3, you are receiving 8 applications. And this was based on the number of applications our program office received. Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. We're almost done, and I apologize. I know we're going to go a little bit over. We're actually about to wrap up. Our payment information, as a reminder, you will receive no more than $2,500 for reading applications this year, as we have done in the past. You will receive $200 for your training attendance and completing the assigned calibration, and $125 per read application that you are assigned. Again, there will be no invoicing required. We will take care of that on the back end. We just need to make sure that you complete your reads, your assigned application, so that when we pull our data file to submit for processing for payment, that it reflects the number of applications and the calibration that you have successfully completed for our program office. So here's the contact information for our program staff. I am your point of contact. We currently do not have access to our phones since we are still working remote. So if you need assistance, please email me and I will work to address it that way. But if there's additional assistance needed, we can certainly set up a technical assistance call via Microsoft Teams to assist you there. But reminding you that we are just going to direct you back to your resources. We can't provide you clarification on something that may give you answers to address the prompt. You are the reader. You are to read the applications independently. But if there's something technical or something that you really can't get through, then we can certainly assist you with that to be successful. Please review your training materials as part of your training throughout this process. Again, these are independent applications. Unless there is a technical issue, you will be redirected to these documents if a specific question arises. And please work directly with your team of reviewers if you have discrepancies to be resolved. So typically you'll get an email and there'll be 3 readers on that email, including yourself. Please work directly with them to resolve the discrepancy and removing the program office from that communication until you have resolved that discrepancy. And that email that you'll get will be clear in that process. And again, all of you have done this before, so it's no different than what we've done in the past.
Charmaine.
Yes.
This is Nina. There was a partnership agreement question, and I want to make sure that I respond to it. Do you see it written anywhere? I want to make sure that we kind of go through that.
I did not see that question. Do you remember what the question was? And we are now at questions, so I can certainly address the questions.
Shannon, where is it? And then I can respond. I'm trying to find it. But in the meantime, someone else can go.
Again, this will be an opportunity if I know some of you all are starting to drop off, but please feel free to raise your hand and we can acknowledge you to speak and ask your question. Thank you all for your feedback. I see some of you are saying thank you.
Yes, great training, Charmaine. In regard to the partnership agreement, I'll just go through the what is expected. You're supposed to review the actual signed copy of the partnership agreement. It should be signed by both. It must be signed by both entities, the local education agency and the community-based organization. So that's a requirement. Should be, and if not, you will need to contact Charmaine directly via email.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
Thanks,
Nina.
Nina.
You're welcome.
Was there any other? I thought there was a couple of questions. I just want to make sure that we answer them before we let you all go. Thank you, Howard, for that. I thought so too. I actually got that idea from a different state, and I thought that that was a great idea. And hopefully those slides will be able to help you, especially those with the comments, as you move through this process. And we do have a question from Janet. So Janet, hold on, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Okay, Janet, you are free to go.
And great music to the DJ.
Thank you. Janet, if you could, you can unmute yourself. I see you have your hand raised. Sure. Okay. Are there any other questions in the chat?
Charmaine, there are several people that still are confused about scoring the prompt based on the information in the prompt versus other parts of the application. So you want to clarify that again?
Yes. So
Chris
I think it's
Christian said,
interesting.
thank you. I believe Dr. Lodeman indicated that we should be including information from other prompts. Please confirm.
Okay. So what was stated is that you should be reviewing each prompt and the information in that prompt as after you read the entire application to ensure you understand what the applicant is trying to say, what their story is being told through the application. But there are areas in other parts of the application that you may need to help you understand the prompt that you're scoring. For example, the competitive priority areas, you're reading those, and then you're going to those prompts. For example, the prompt 20, the prompt regarding family engagement, you're going to know in that prompt what was stated in the competitive priority area for family engagement. That's just an example. Or in the partnership area, you're going to note that the partnership agreement states, whatever that they agreed to or such and such. So that's what we're talking about as far as you reading. You're referring to other parts of the application to help you score your prompts. But the information that you're looking for, they should be addressing the prompts. The objective and the indicator should be what they're addressing in their prompt. You may have to go to other parts of the application to refer to other things, but in general, you are addressing the prompt. The information that you need should be in the prompt. Typically, if another prompt states additional information for that scoring prompt, I will make a note of the other prompt number in the comment section. We'll make a note of the other prompt number in the comment section. So so number 16. So what you're saying is, if you are looking at another prompt and you're referring to another prompt that you're scoring, and you're going to go back and say per prompt number, whatever. I see what you're saying, but what we're saying is you should be scoring the prompt based on the information in that prompt. It shouldn't be back and forth between prompts. You shouldn't be doing that, because they should be addressing the indicator and the objective that's stated for prompt number 1 or prompt number 3 or prompt number 8. Okay. Janet, your question is whether or not data older than 10 years will be acceptable. So that would be up to your professional judgment, but if it doesn't support the information in the prompt, like if they're offering programming, virtual programming, like a virtual program, and the data that the research that they're sharing doesn't reflect what they're proposing, then that may be something you want to mention or score based off of. That's if the data that's being provided, if the research being provided doesn't clearly support what they're proposing, then that would be something you need to score based off of, if that makes sense. Hi, Trish. Will you be sharing out tips that from, yes, so Trish, Stacy, Dr. Brinkley, she's been collecting the questions and answers from the chat. And once I get that information, I'm going to update the grant reviewer guide that you all were sent. Because if you notice the last page, it has a placeholder there for that information. I'm going to put that there. And once the recording is available, then I'm also going to send that out with the recording so that you can have that for reference. So you will get that within the next day or so. I'm looking to see if there are any other, okay. Thank you, Nina. Gloria, if they are making the case for sustainability, old data might be acceptable. You're welcome, Trish.
Wow.
Again, it's based on professional judgment. If the research provided does or does not support what they are addressing in their prompts, then that's how you would score. Any other questions? All righty. Well, on behalf of the 21st Century team here at the Ohio Department of Education, we thank you for your time today. Again, you should start receiving your applications via the CCIP grant score inbox here shortly. If there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself, and I will work to assist you as much as I can to ensure your continued success. We thank you again, and much success during this year's process. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.